Thank you for joining me again, my friends. Today, on another episode of The Art of Comic Writing, I'm your host, Jorge Medina. That's George with a J. And I prepared for you something a tad bit different. Either way, I hope you enjoy it. I'm pretty sure you've heard the term funny books. The term funny books is usually used when talking about comic books. Why do they call them funny books? Comic strips predate comics. And back in the days, these comic strips were called funnies, right? These strips were the first to be collected into books. They were the first to be collected into books, and they came to be called funny books. Comic books came after and adopted the name. Funny books or comic books, and writing them is what I've been talking about for the past few months. So if you checked at the show, you know that I have a guest on the show and we talk about, writing. And, most of the time we talk about writing for comics. A lot of the times we talk about writing in general, but most of the time it's for comics. So anyway, today I talked to a creator of the OG funny books or the funnies or comic strips. And we're going to talk about what it's like to write a comic strip versus a comic book. Plus, we're going to be giving him a writing prompt. We do that every week. So we're going to be giving him a writing prompt as well. Okay, so without further ado, this gentleman has been animating, drawing, and creating comics and comic strips for a very long time. He has over 15 years of experience as an educator in digital and traditional art, which in fact includes graphic design and animation. He has a very funny comic strip on Instagram called The Wiz. The link will be in the show notes. And on his downtime, what downtime? He has a podcast entitled Get in Tune. The man is so awesome. Westchester County has honored him with his own day. That's right. Google it. Please welcome Mr. Michael Grassia. There he is. There he is.
Thank you for that wonderful intro. Wow.
Yeah. Well, listen, you've done that all. I didn't lie. That's all.
No, it's true. It's true. I just don't talk about things like that.
No, you don't. But listen, you've done a lot. I mean, being in as an educator, 15 years teaching these kids how to do, how to do digital art. I mean, you've been doing it for a long time. So
actually, I've been teaching over 20 years now.
Look at that. Wow.
Yeah.
Update. Yeah. Jesus, good stuff. Good stuff. But thank you so much, Michael, for coming on.
Thank you.
Today we're gonna do, absolutely, man. Today we're gonna do something a little different. And like I mentioned in the intro, I've been talking about comic book writing and writing in general. We go into writing in general. But today, and I thank you because you were the one who reached out, hey George, this would be interesting, talking about comic strips, the original funny books, right? So here you are. We're gonna talk about writing and creating comic strips versus comic books. So we're going to jump into it. Do you write a script? And this is something that I was curious about also, because, you come up with these scripts every week. You have them up there. Do you write a script or make up the drawings as you go? Is it the drawings or is it the script? Like, what is it? How do you work that out?
It's different for everything that I do. Comic book wise, I tend to have more of an outline than anything, but I know we're focusing on strips. So sometimes I do a funny drawing and then I come up with a gag that goes along with it. But usually what happens is I kind of write the joke first.
Like you literally write it down.
Sometimes I write it down. Usually it's in my head. The thing is, when you've been doing a strip for as long as I have, the characters kind of are alive to me.
Yeah.
So I could be like, what happens if the Wiz was at the grocery store, and I could start seeing things and have conversations and hear them clearly in my head, so I mean, it sounds like I'm a little crazy, but really these characters are real to me. I mean, they're friends of mine. I get to hang out with these characters and I see how they interact. And so sometimes I'll just have it in my head. Like a few weeks ago, I did a strip and I had the whole thing in my head. And then as I was drawing it, I rewrote the entire strip.
Wow, really?
So yeah, it wasn't, yeah. So it just happens sometimes that way. But usually it's, okay, the Wiz is, I don't know, he's in his lab making a potion. And now all of a sudden I got potion jokes.
Gotcha.
And that's so I
yeah.
just basically put him in a setting, and then I say, who is he going to interact with? And I bring that character in, and the story just kind of goes in my head. But I will write them down so I don't forget.
That's what I was thinking, right?
Yeah,
Because you have these jokes that come up into your head, and you may be not able to write them right away or draw them right away. So I'm pretty sure you got to write them somewhere. You got to put them down
Yeah,
somewhere.
sometimes I bullet point on my phone, or I'll just make a quick. I wish I had the folder next to me so I could show you. Sometimes I just write on index cards, and it's just a little like bullet point. If I have to put a description, I'll say, okay, the Wiz is in his lab, but it's usually W for the Wiz, and this is what is said, and then A for Ajax, this is what is said. So I kind of do index cards, or I sketch. But I will say this. This is something that's a little nutty about me. When I'm really sitting down to write jokes, and primarily jokes,
right?
I need to write on a yellow legal pad that is college ruled. I need my narrow ruled paper. I don't like wide ruled. I don't like white paper for this. I like yellow.
Oh, that is funny.
Yeah, so I sit down with that. I have a bunch in my closet. I just pull one out and I go through it. And this is how. And I'll go then sit on my couch or lay in bed, and I'll just start writing on it.
Oh man, dude, that is so cool, man. Because I do too. I write on. I like pen and pad, right? I like that. So when I hear somebody else does the same, I mean, you take it to the extreme where you're like, it's got to be yellow. It's got to be college ruled. And for those who don't know, college ruled is the thinner line. I mean, I'm sure everybody watching knows. This isn't like the regular, space. You like them little. Why? Why?
I don't know. It's just I'm neurotic. I don't know.
Do you write small?
I tend to, but maybe that's it. I spent so many years lettering comics that first of all, I can't write in lowercase anymore. Everything's in caps for me.
And when you say lettering comics, you're talking about like by hand.
Hand lettering, Ames lettering guide, my ruler, my T-square, and I spent so many years. So I cannot write in lowercase anymore. I can't even write script. I'm lucky I can sign my name some days. It's that's how that is.
Do you have different signatures? Do you have like a signature for like your paper, like your government papers, and then you have like your own artist signature?
My artist signature is in print.
Yeah.
My other signature is as good a script as I can do.
It's a scribble.
Yeah. I don't want to go scribble, but yeah, it's not.
Mine is terrible.
It is a little messy, but I will say this, and this is for everybody watching. This is a great tip if you're an artist or if you're a writer or whatever, and somebody asks you for an autograph. Do not sign the same way you sign your checks. I had someone come up to me at a show once and ask me, to sign. And he's like, they bought something from me. Like, can you sign this? So I signed it with my last name, Grassia. It's all hand printed, and I have a look that it goes with.
Yeah.
And then they're like, no, I want you to sign how you sign your checks. And I said, no, that's not going to happen.
Exactly. Nope.
But that's the thing. I'm like, you got to have different ones.
You do.
Yeah.
My nephew is getting into art, and he's majoring in like digital art and stuff like that. And I tell him all the time, your signature when you're signing your artwork should be different than when you're signing, like you said, a checkbook. It has to be different, and try to make it legible so that they know who you are, who the artist is. I always say that to him. But all right. So the second question here, Mike.
Yes.
Do you compose or design the page as a whole? Or do you focus more on individual panel composition when you're creating your script?
So here's the thing. When I'm doing a comic book, as the art on there, the whole page has to look good together.
Right.
So when I'm writing an actual script for a comic book and I say, okay, panel 1 is establishing shot, largest on the page, but I know I'm going to have maybe three tiers of there, and then I'm going to be like, okay, panel 2 and 3 are on the next one, and then 4, 5, and 6 are on the bottom. I have to know how to break them up properly that it does fit. Now, for me as a writer, I mean, and not when I say fit, it just how also that it looks good. As
Yeah.
as an artist, having an illustration background, having graphic design, I know in my head I think very visual, so
Mhm.
I can see in my head how to break the panels up that the page looks good as a whole. Yet at the same time, each individual panel looks good,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
move along. Now, when I come to a comic strip, it depends on the type of strip. If I'm doing a story strip, I think I have, if it's like a what we call a daily, which would be like the 3-4 panels.
Mhm.
I only have 3-4 panels to work with, so I'm very limited in space, and I go with the comic book layout idea almost, where I need to have my establishing shot, I need to have the setup shot, I need to have the climax, the resolution, or whatever. So I know what my 4 panels are, but and they could be different camera angles to make the strip look well. And again, this is all when I write. And when
Mm.
I'm doing story, I really, really write a lot more than when I do like gags. Gags I can be a little looser with. And when I do something like The Wiz, and you'll notice it, very rare do I break camera angles. Like, it's usually one angle. I tend to think of it a little bit more like I'm watching a stage show,
Okay.
like theater. So I tend not to, when I do gags, to change up much. I don't. So it's just really the same scene. Once in a while, I'll break that and change it in camera angles because it needs it. But um, but yeah, it's all there in the writing when I
You,
make my notes.
it's interesting because you said you called you. I mean, and I didn't even realize this, that there are two kinds of comic strips. Right? You have the story and the gag.
Yeah.
What do you prefer, one over the other, or is just whatever you're in the mood to kind of write that day?
Well,
Yeah.
no, I mean, I like both. I prefer strips over books. I'll say that. Even though I collected comics growing up, like comic books, I always read the newspaper when my parents got it.
Yeah.
When I'd visit family in New York City, um, they would have like the daily news that got more comics than my local paper did, and they'd have more story strips. So I'd see Dick Tracy in there, Spider-Man, the Phantom,
Yeah.
Mandrake the Magician, things like that. Whereas my local paper maybe just had Dick Tracy as an actual story strip, and the rest were gag strips.
Hmm.
Um, I, what it is, I have a knack for writing jokes. I understand the format,
Yeah.
but I do better with single panel stuff. And when I write specifically for gag strips, I think I'm writing more to animation than I actually am writing comics. Because my background, is so heavy in animation.
Hmm.
I tend to feel that a lot of the stuff I write would work better in animation. So sometimes I'll finish a strip and just totally hate it because I'm like, oh, I should have totally animated that, you
Got it.
know.
Got it.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
a story strip, they're fun to do, and I'm always on the lookout for maybe someone who can write a story strip, because I sometimes don't have the time, but I have ideas.
Right. Yeah. Of
So
course.
maybe something's, one day I'll find someone who wants to collaborate on an idea,
Yeah. 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 Oh
so
yeah. Oh yeah.
and do a
Oh yeah.
story strip.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right. So where do you draw inspiration to create your strips? And I know that you said, and you pretty much answered this, I think, a little earlier. You could be at the grocery store, whatever, but where do you draw the inspiration from?
Oh, life. Definitely life. Things I watch on TV, conversation with friends, family. I years ago. This is going back to the time of like Discmans and stuff. Uh, I used to sit in. I used to sit in like a Starbucks and
Uh-huh.
put a Discman on the table and the earphones in my ears, but I wouldn't play anything. And I would just sit and listen, because people would feel that they're so much more open and can talk when they think people
Nobody's
aren't
listening.
listening.
Yeah.
And I would just, oh my God, that's a great story. That's a great idea.
That's
And I would sit
hilarious.
and I would totally do that. And, I don't go out as much as I used to. But like if I do things like that, I just put my AirPods in my ears or something now, and
That's
I'll
good.
still do it once in a while. But I used to love to people watch. I used to love, you know, um, the more you read, the more you watch and pay attention on what's going on in the world. It really comes down to being educated.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I'm like the smartest guy in the world,
Right.
because I'm definitely not. I'm far from it. But I think the more I educate myself with pop culture, with the news, with
Yeah.
just comic books, whatever, hanging out with friends, talking with it, the more interaction I have, the better I feel I write.
Like you said, listening to conversations is a great way to learn how to write dialogue. Because especially like, let's say for example, you're in Boston, or you're in Chicago, or you're in another city or another country. Just hearing how the locals speak helps you when you're writing a story about that area of the world,
Yeah,
because it's just more authentic, right? It's not just you
absolutely.
speaking, it's you've actually heard those conversations. So sitting down with a walk, I mean, nowadays I guess you could
Yeah,
just put your headphones in and
yeah,
pretend you're listening to something, and totally do. I like that. I
yeah,
like that little trick right there, man, where you just gotta not listen to anything other than what's going on around you and everybody.
yeah,
You're right. People drop their guard, and now they just start talking because
yeah.
nobody's listening. Yeah, or
And
so
today they don't even care. So
that's true. That is true. That is
yeah,
true. But that's awesome, dude. So yeah, so just life inspires what you create. I've
yeah.
also noticed in some of the strips that you've put out, you've included a mom,
Mhm.
like different characters. You're bringing in other characters that come in and out of the strip, and I thought that was kind of cool because you're adding
Thank you.
to the cast.
That's actually very helpful to do, because sometimes I'll write jokes that aren't 100% good for one of the main characters. So I got to figure out how to introduce a character.
So now let me ask you this, 'cause I think that a lot of us, do this differently. But how do you plan your day as a creator? I know you work, a 9 to 5, so 9 to 5 or
Well,
whatever.
actually, it's 10:30 to
Right.
7:30 is
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
day.
It's a whole
So
different, right? But you
so
do have a job. So how do
yes,
you plan your day as a creator, like your creative day? And I know you work and create, you are creative when you work, but how do you do it?
when I get up, after I have my cup of coffee and some breakfast, if I'm in the studio. I'm checking emails. I'm maybe doing a little writing or some sketching, or just loosening up for the day. If I can get any actual work done before I start my day job, awesome.
Mhm.
Then I take my lunch hour from 3:30 to 4:30, and actually that's a real break time. I try not to do anything on there. You know what I do? I wash dishes. I save all the stuff up, and no matter if my day job was crazy, because some
Mhm.
days I can have really busy days or I can have a slow day. If I'm having a busy day or I have a lot of work planned, I know for later, washing dishes is just meditative for me. I put earbuds in, and I'll put like YouTube on or music. I'll listen to a podcast or some, whatever,
Yeah.
or I'll just listen to me, and I just wash dishes. And it takes me and I'll leave stuff from the morning, even stuff maybe from last night, as long as it's not gross. I'll leave stuff in there, and I will wash dishes for 20 minutes to a half hour.
Wow.
And I am just so, then I clean the kitchen a little bit. And that is how I spend my lunch hour. Because I keep food, prepped in the fridge. So if I get hungry while I work, I just run in
And just eat.
and grab it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't do anything, but it relaxes me, and I get so many ideas. It's because I'm not thinking about my day job. I'm not thinking about my comics. I'm not thinking
Mm,
about animation. I'm not thinking about anything. I'm just thinking about nothing.
that's awesome, dude.
And so I kind of get creative. I do that. Um, and then when I get off work, it's dinner, spend some time with my wife, and by 9 o'clock, I'm back in the studio,
Hmm.
and I will work until I need to stop. And if it's a night I'm drawing the Wiz, that could be a 2 to 5 hour job.
Oh wow.
So it's something like that. I have Monday night live draws that I do.
Yeah.
That that really depends on how many people are interacting with me on the live draw. I'm not upset if I don't finish something on the live draw because I know I'll go back and finish it later, maybe in the morning or something. But if I'm having an interaction, it makes the live draw more fun, and I'll stay on for 2 hours. If nobody's really interacting, I'll say, okay, it's been an hour, nobody's really around, I'll see you later.
Right.
And then Wednesday nights when I do Get in Tune, that, I mean, you've been on it. It's conversational. You know, I shoot for an hour, but I've done an hour and a half. I've done 3 hours. I had a guest I almost did 4 full hours with, man, because we were just into such a good conversation.
Awesome.
So my show, it's just so that, and then Thursday and Friday are my nights to kind of relax. That is, I don't go in the studio, but I have my iPad or my laptop, and I spend the night, you know, like watching TV with my wife or something. You know?
Right.
So, but I still have work I can do because I don't need to officially be in the studio.
Discipline is so important, and I think that a lot of us don't have it. And I say us, I mean me. You know, like it's very hard to stay disciplined and do what you're supposed to do every single day, to get what you got to get done. It's like, I mean, and like you said, finding that time to kind of just zone out and just be away from everything. I think that that's so important because we're bombarded with things every day, and we're constantly thinking about the next move or the next thing we have to do, especially as indie creators and, you know, small press guys. We do that. We tend to press. We got to get this done. We got to get this done. And in reality, I think what you got going on there, I think that's great, man. Just having that hour or a half hour, whatever, just to kind of decompress and just say, okay, I'm not thinking about anything.
See, I'll be honest. I do it even when my wife is home, and I'm cooking dinner. You know, if I'm cooking, I'll just put those on and because, you know, first of all, our kitchen and our living room kind of connect. So if she's watching TV, I can hear it, or if she's on the phone, I can hear. And I just kind of want to zone out and just do my thing. And it's needed. It's very much needed, especially after a long day. I think the idea of self-care is very important. And that is just one of those things, you know. Especially after I've been staring at a computer for 7, 8, 10 hours straight, and you just want that break, and you just kind of, you know, there are some nights I don't even want to watch TV because I've just been staring at a screen for so long.
Right. So when you go back to the studio after you know, dinner or all that other stuff, and you're in there, you're saying, you know, the Wiz maybe sometimes a 5-hour day, so you're going to bed pretty late then.
Well, I'm still on Pacific time, so going to bed at like 1 a.m. for me in you know, Eastern time is like going to bed at 10 a.m. over there. I mean 10 p.m. over there. So it's like kind of a normal, you know, like before I got this job, I used to wake up at between 5:30 and 6 every morning. Okay, Eastern time. Now I'm waking up at, you know, like I said, 7:30, 8:30, 8:30, whatever it is. If you think about it, 8 o'clock is 5 a.m. 8:30 is 5:30 over there. So I'm still on the same kind of sleeping schedule that's just been shifted to another time zone.
I was just in the West Coast visiting family, but I was working from there just so I wouldn't use up my days, and I was getting up because I work 8 to 5, so I was working 5 to 2 over there. Getting up at 5 in the morning, bro, it was so hard. But so I totally hear you about the time difference, and it does work when you're here, because it's better when you're on this side of the timeline. Yeah, no, that's awesome, dude. That's awesome. All right, so we're gonna take a little break, guys. Check this out.
If I die tomorrow, I hope you hear these words. I ain't here to flip no birds or sip no syrup. Hope the future generations can get this urge. Stay woke, youngin', and avenge these nerds.
All right, and we're back here. All right, so final question, Mike. This is the topic of the show, and I think we've kind of talked about it a little bit in the beginning, the differences between the two. But you've written both. You've written comic books. You obviously have a very, very funny comic strip, which I enjoy a lot, dude. What is the difference? What is the difference between writing for the two? What do you find is the biggest difference?
Writing for comic books, I have more room. A lot more room because I have multiple pages to go with. Writing for a strip, The challenge is, can you get all your information in 3 or 4 panels? Or if you're doing a Sunday strip, you have a little bit more. I tend to work what we call the dailies, which are 3 to 4 panels, which is what, when you look at a Sunday strip, that's where you maybe have 6 or more strips where it's, 2 or 3 tiers of a joke of a comic. So you can do a lot more with those. But I've always been a fan of single panel jokes. I like kind of the quick in and out of a story or of a joke. And
those sound like they can be tough, though, the single panel ones.
They can be, but I don't know. I've just always kind of had a knack for it. It's kind of like, okay, so here's the thing. To write a joke, it really comes in. And if you want to learn comic strips, really look at Garfield, man. Like Garfield, I know a lot of people can make fun of, but it's like the idea of the perfect setup for a joke. It's introduce, set up, punchline. That's it. And Garfield does that in 3 panels, and that's what makes a 3-panel strip perfect. Now, sometimes we add a 4th panel, and we can have an introduction, we can have a setup, we can have what we refer to as the beat, which is basically a pause, and then the punchline. Or you can have the punchline on the 3rd panel and have like a reverse punchline happen. So there's different things that we can do. In comic books, I could write more information, in more dialogue if I even wanted to. In strips, you have such limited real estate that I try to keep each panel. And I read this somewhere when I was a kid. It might actually come from Jim Davis, who created Garfield, or it just came from another cartoonist I read about in a book or whatever. But I try not to put more than 20 words per panel. So that if I have 2 people,
in comics or strips?
No, in strips.
In strips.
Strips. I mean, I sometimes play with that in comics when I'm specifically working with kid comics.
Yeah.
Because I want to keep it easy to read.
Yeah.
If I'm doing something for an older crowd, I can write a little more and a little, with a little stronger vocabulary or whatever. Yeah. And when I say stronger, I don't mean cursing. I mean just
bigger words.
Bigger words. But when I'm writing a strip, if I have 2 people talking, I don't want all this information.
That's true.
So I need to just get my point across. You're supposed to be able to read it in like 10, 15 seconds, So I can't have a lot of words in strips.
Yeah.
And that is something I'm always playing with and constantly writing and rewriting, that when I'm, and I letter digitally these days. So I type out exactly what I had, and I read the strip like 5 times. It sounds good to me. I show it to my wife. Does it sound good? And she'll be like, well, maybe that one's a little off. Like that reads funny. And I'm like, okay, how do I fix that panel then? And I go back, and do I have to fix another panel to make that panel work? So I'm always playing with the wording right up until file save. That final save and export as a JPEG. Yes.
Yeah. And then you're posting it. Now, when do you post your strips? Do you have a specific day that you post?
Every Wednesday, the Wiz comes out on Facebook and Instagram. That's where they are currently. They go up between 8 and 9 a.m. because, like I said, I wake up around 8:30. Yeah. So they're up by 9 a.m. Eastern every Wednesday.
And I guess the reason why I asked you is because you mentioned the Sunday funnies, right? Like that we used to read. Do you ever do Sunday funny style kind of strips where you have more than 4 panels?
I have drawn them, not for the Wiz.
Okay.
And I tend not to do them for humor. Okay. I have sometimes it's harder to pull a joke and make it last longer for me. Like I said, I kind of have a knack for the single panels, like that short, just in and out kind of reading. That's why, like, when I do multi-panels, I don't like to go past 4 panels. But if I'm doing a story strip, absolutely, I like to add more strips, more panels to that to really have the story be fleshed out.
Would you say that it's I guess, is it harder to kind of develop a character in a comic strip than it is a comic book because you have less time to do so or less pages to do so?
It depends. Again, in a strip, you know, if you're doing what I do, it's weekly. You hope people are coming back every week to continue to read.
Right.
If you're doing not to go deep into the history of comic strips, but when they were in the newspaper and people read them regularly back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, all that era, when cartoonists were looked at as like the big celebrities of the world,
Right.
they were daily strips, so people would buy the newspaper every day just to see, you know, what's going on in Dick Tracy or something, you know. So to develop the characters were much easier then. Also, comic books weren't as big, you know, until later on. But when you have now a weekly strip, you hope people come back. Right. So it is a little harder to develop the characters now, or, you know, get people interested in some of them. Sure. However, when you do a comic book, you know, to me, that comes down to marketing. Is it a print book? Is it digital book? How are you getting your readers? If it's a print book, you better hope those people are buying those books so they can love the character. You know what I mean? Like, like it's not difficult to write a great character in a 22-page story. You could do that. And as long as those readers are there, they're going to love that character and come back for the next 22 or so pages.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm doing 3-4 panels a week, and it's like, come on, give me more than 26 likes. Give me more. There's 27. Give me up. You know, that's, you know, you're watching those intensely because, you know, some weeks you get higher, some weeks you get lower. And it's like, okay, then you got to go back and study your strip. Was it funny? What did I do? Was the writing bad? Did I spell a word wrong? Was the joke bad? You know, like I have to go back and I analyze these things.
Yeah.
So that each week I can be like, okay, well, I got 20 likes on this week. Next week, my goal is 30, you know, and like I try to, and at the end of the day, those things don't really matter to me because I'm putting out something I enjoy and I know people are enjoying it, but it is a business. So I need to keep that stuff in mind when I'm looking at it.
Yeah, and I think the important thing for those watching, the important thing when you're like, for example, if you follow the Wiz or whatever, share it with your friends, send it to a friend. Hey, check this out. Check this out. Especially if you found it really funny, share it. You know what I mean? Hey, check this out, and that way, you know, it'll keep going. But Mike, I know you have you're recording a show tonight, as a matter of fact. So bonus question. Yes. Bonus question. Here it is. What's your favorite YouTube channel other than Getting Tuned? And why is it Get Your Meds?
You want to know the reason?
Yes, please.
Because it's always important to take your meds. That is how you stay strong. That is how you stay healthy. And that is how you are always, you know, focused and know what you're supposed to be doing right.
I love it. Yes. All right. Final bit of business. And this is for everybody watching. I do this every week. It's the writing prompt. Okay.
Yep.
15 minutes in your room, writing down whatever you want to write. You could do it in the form of a script, short story, whatever. You could draw it out, whatever. Your prompt tonight, Michael, is an astronaut lost in space. Simple, easy. An astronaut lost in space. How did he get lost? Who's this astronaut? Go, you know, whatever you want, 15 minutes, write it down.
That's hysterical.
And go for it.
Do you know, can I tell you why that's hysterical?
Tell me.
Because I've already drawn 3 jokes like that. In the past, I have. Not recently, but many years ago, I have a single panel of an astronaut stuck on a planet with the spaceship flying behind him, and he's like, and he says something like, "I guess I shouldn't have made fun of his driving." I have another one where he's just floating in space, and it says "Earth and Bust." He's holding a sign. Earth or bust, you know. So I have a few things I've done with lost
something that you've thought about in the past.
Oh my God, I love the topic. I love the topic.
I love it. All right. Well, good. It works. Michael, thank you so much for coming on, my friend. This has been a lot of fun. We'll have to do it again. I love, you know, I feel like we could talk about this kind of stuff for days. I was even before we came on, we were talking about some stuff. But I know you got things to do. I'll let you go. But again, thank you very much for coming on, my friend.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun tonight.
You got it, man. And that was Mr. Michael Grassia. Thank you so much for coming on, Michael. We appreciate you. Thank you guys for watching the show. That was a good time. That was fun. I always like talking to Michael. He's got so much knowledge about, comics, animation, comic strips. Obviously, don't forget The Wiz. Check out The Wiz comic. The link's going to be in the show notes. Make sure you follow it. It's on Instagram. It's on Facebook. When you read the comic strip, if you like it, love it, share it. Share it out to your friends. Let them know that that strip exists. He's doing a really good job, and hopefully it'll continue. But yeah, what did you guys think? What did you think about the topic today? The difference between comic books and comic strips. What do you prefer? Do you prefer the comic book writing, or do you prefer comic strip writing? What is it? What do you like better? And don't forget the writing prompt. The writing prompt today is an astronaut lost in space. Funny thing that Michael had already written a bunch of things about that. But yeah, check that out if you want to get down with that. Write 15 minutes, sit down, write, whether it's a short story, it's a scene, whatever you want to write. And then if you're happy with it, send it over to me. I will post it on my site, and everybody can enjoy it. But that's only if you want. Don't forget, next week I have another show, so tune in. And don't forget, my friends, keep writing. Peace.